Hello and welcome. Suzanne Moore here from the Project Manager Clinic. And today I've got another conversation with an expert. I'm super excited about it, and I hope you will be as well. Today's session is with Gail Creighton Davies, and we're going to be talking about framing, which is something that she knows all about, and project performance, and probably a little bit of organisational performance and board performance too, I'd say, from what I've found out just talking about you. Before we start this, I remind everyone that this session is recorded, will be on the YouTube channel at the Project Manager Clinic, and there'll be details there of everything else, and also the website. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe down below and give me a thumbs up, and we'll remind you of that throughout the session. So, Gail is an expert in strategic governance, portfolio management, and risk frameworks, and not as boring as it actually seems. It can be really exciting. And actually, if these things are done badly, it can get really exciting really fast, in my experience. So let's talk about that. Now, through her Stove Academy, have I said that right, Gail?
You have,
Stove?
yeah. Yeah.
Academy and consulting practice, she works with boards, executives, PMOs, and investment councils to create the scaffolding that transforms portfolios from chaotic to high performing. No mean feat, because those groups not easy to work with all the time. You're lucky if you get good ones. If you get good ones, great. So it can be really exciting. Gail's here to talk about project portfolio framing, which when I heard this, I thought, oh, we've got to talk about that. That sounds really interesting. A powerful approach that helps decision makers see clearly, prioritise effectively, and deliver strategy with confidence. Because how many times have we all been involved in portfolios of work or even projects that go bad? Too many times. So welcome, Gail, and I'm really pleased to have you here with me today. I'm going to hand over to you, and just if you can just talk a little bit about how you came to this.
Oh, thanks a million, Suzanne. So, just a quick introduction, just of how I have the nerve and the right to even talk about this. So, starting off with an IT background, really at databases, and my real passion is showing where information flows and how we all need good, solid information to make decisions. And that just goes throughout the entire organization. So, starting from that background, moved into projects, programs, portfolios. And while I'm playing in that space, I was involved in a couple of not-for-profits and voted onto their boards, and then actually took a chair position in one of the boards. Now, in there, I was part of I think it was a 3-year cycle. We did our strategic planning. And it was my first time ever being part of the strategic plan. We've always seen it when it was delivered in the glossy brochure and thought, wow, this is fantastic. But then we're just, okay, now here's a project and here's a program, just get it done. But actually seeing it from the flip side, saying, well, there's the strategy. I thought, well, that's great. I thought, well, how are we defining success? What's our role now? And I was asking the other board members, well, how are we going to know that we're tracking this? How are we going to oversee it? Do we just say that's great, pop it in a drawer, and in 5 years' time say, woohoo, we did it, whenever it's so vague you could nearly drive a bus through it? Or are we actually going to monitor this? So that was when I started thinking about, well, how do strategies get delivered? Look, the business operations, they deliver in their everyday work. But when the organization's going through a change, it's not the BAU, it's the CAU, the change as usual. That's the part, the projects, the programs in those portfolios, that's the bit that's going to move the organization to a different outcome. So from seeing it from the board side, I'm wondering, do I have an update coming? It's 6 months now, it's a year, it's now 18 months. What's happening? And getting nervous and asking questions and just getting crickets. So I thought, well, okay, in my work in the portfolio space, what can I do to enable the investment council to be able to give that confidence to the board and give it on the flip side? Say, like, here's what we're doing to move the dial so that they can have confidence that that money's been well invested, and to give them the ability to make changes of decision, because, hey, just look at the world at the minute, it's a bit wobbly. Things are changing all the time, and if you don't have your prioritization and framing in place, how on earth can anybody make a decision?
But
They,
it's often it's not there though, Gail. Very often in the large ones that I've done, delivering transformation roadmap, there's a number of factors that go into play. It's not just the governance. It's not just the strategy. They sometimes seem to put the strategy in a drawer for 6 months, is sort of what you're talking about. They don't link what they're delivering in project land back to any sort of strategy, even though that they say that they do. Um, do you think that strategic governance matters more today than ever before?
oh, even more. So organizations there's so much scrutiny on them now, and especially on boards. An organization that doesn't perform, and by perform is as in moving the dial, doing what they say they're going to do and being visible about it. They don't perform, they will fold. So you've got performance and conformance. If you take the analogy of two teams playing a sport, if the teams go onto the pitch and conform, play by the rules, it's not going to be really exciting. So we've got state of origin at the minute. Everybody goes on and just plays by the rules. It's really, really dull. But if one team actually performs, knows what their guardrails are, but actually performs, they're gonna win. They're gonna smash them. So organizations that want to survive and thrive, they have got to perform. And boards, that's part of their corporate principles, is to set the strategy and make sure they've got the right capability in the organization to deliver that strategy. But make sure the culture's solid, and then oversee that performance, and then report back to it.
So, I mean, that performance is a very interesting conversation, really, because we all know that we get into project land, and some projects seem to be just moving along quite well. And I've often talked about this, that the project managers that are doing a great job and actually delivering, there's no big fanfare, there's no disasters that are happening. They're not getting patted on the back. In fact, they very often get overlooked for any promotion. It's the ones that cause the catastrophes that aren't performing that are bubbling to the surface, and everybody's taking notice of these people. So you talk about framing. Is this something to do with how we see those projects performing? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so framing really enables the projects to be set up for success in the first place. The analysis has shown that if you have the projects framed properly at the very outset, before you even put a project manager onto it, you frame them properly, you have a 50% better chance of actually getting the value that you wanted, that you expected at the beginning. Whether the delivery is good or bad, you have a 50% better chance of actually getting that value. And whenever the statistics are telling us that about 70% of projects fail to deliver the original intended outcomes, doing the framing, it doesn't take too long to do, but it's a very powerful process. Putting that in place, and you're shifting the odds in the right way.
25 years ago when I started doing this project management, 75% of IT projects were failing. It's still about 70, as you've said, percent of projects that are failing. They are often not set up for success like you're talking about. I find too many times the project manager is rushed to put a schedule together before even the deliverables and the strategy to deliver is even clear.
Yeah.
So I know you've just talked a little bit about that before, just then, but can you give me an example of what you mean?
So there's one I remember really, really clearly, and it was urgent. I was part of the portfolio team and the lead project delivery representative. So we were doing a framing process with the business, and this piece of work absolutely urgent. And from what they were telling us, it was actually going to give really good value. So I understood their enthusiasm. We went through the framing process, and we got them to articulate what's the outcome you want to get to. What's wrong with now? What is it you want to get to? You know, what is the target? What's the future state look like? Give us the North Star that we can make sure the project's moving towards. Give us the benefits, very, very clear, the business articulating the benefits, and very, very simply, give me a story. Tell me about if we do this, it means that that will happen or that won't happen, or we will increase this or decrease that, all those good benefit words. They were able to tell us all of that. That was brilliant. So we had our scope, we had our target state, we had our benefits. Then when we drilled into our constraints, you know, the good old risk management, what could go wrong, what must go right? Is it actually going to be architecture going to sign this off? And then the organizational change part. Is the go live going to hit at the worst possible time for the teams? Do we have the people to deliver it? And really importantly, do we have the subject matter experts on the organization to actually be part of this change? Because the delivery teams, they're not the SMEs, nor should they be. But do we have those subject matter experts? As soon as we asked that question in the framing, and that framing, can I just say, was about 1 hour session. That's all it took,
Wow.
but just asking the right questions. Once we said, who's the SMEs that we need for this piece of work? We got the names, and then suddenly, oh, that person's going on long service leave and the backup has got parental leave coming up. And it was stopped. They could not proceed. Otherwise, if they had said, yeah, let's keep going, we would have hit up against risk number one in pretty much every single project that I see. Business aren't available.
Yeah.
And then you're stalled. That investment could have gone somewhere else. You could have scheduled it. Okay, let's start it in 6 months' time. Put something else in now. Let's work within the boundaries of the budget. All those different constraints, you find you get real visibility if you go through the framing process. And it's simple questioning.
I found it interesting what you said about telling a story.
Yeah.
Because so often projects are seen as these chunks or things that can be chunked down. And one of my least favourite things is Prince too, because it seems to introduce this ridiculous phasing or whatever. Another story. But I believe that you always have to tell a story, and certainly how you're going to approach the projects or portfolio and what your strategy is for delivery. But you're talking about a story, so it's almost like a journey that you're talking about. Right.
So any change, anything that needs to be funded, if you reflect it back into your own life, if you're going to give some of your own personal money towards something, you want to know why. What's the why? Simon Sinek always says, start with the why. Well, every project's the same. Even if it's a keep the lights on, even if it's a server upgrade, why do we need that server? Oh, well, it does this. And who uses it? And what information stored in it? Back to my DBA geek. What information's in it? What is the process that's relying on that information? Who's going to use that information for a decision? Everything comes back to the why, every single investment. So if you have that, then people go, okay, even the dullest project title, oh my God, I've had a few really unsexy titles. And you think, what on earth's that doing? As soon as somebody says, well, it's going to enable us to do this, for these reasons, you go, okay, I got it. And not just the delivery teams, but the SMEs who you rely on to be with you on the journey, your sponsors, the investment council. Everybody says, okay, yeah, I got it. Now we will definitely invest in this. They understand it and they will go with it.
Because Gail, we've got a couple of people with us on the webinar live today. I just wanted to see if there was any questions from either Margaret or Sharon in what Gail's talked about so far before we start talking about anything else. Well, we've got plenty to talk about.
I just have a quick one. I find that getting interest in this framing conversation is difficult. Like there's always there seems to be this attitude of I've had the thought, just get on with it.
Mm.
What sort of approaches do you take to help increase that level of buy-in to actually have? I mean, it's only an hour and it makes such a difference.
Mm-hmm.
How do you approach that?
Well, we have it up front. So the entering into the framing session, you pretty much have an idea bubble. You've got just like a briefing document from the business, and that's all you have. It's hard to know what type of delivery team you're going to assign to it. It's hard to know how long this is going to be, how complex this is, how we tried this before. There's so many factors that you just don't know until you've talked a bit more about it. So by getting the people in the room and spending that little bit of time and presenting it to them as, hey guys, we just want to capture this information and be very clear. This is the agenda. This is what we're going to go through. We will ask you these things and we will then do all the work in the background and then come back to you with your one-page proposal. They're usually pretty grateful to say, oh, that's great. I don't have to do the project on a page. I can just offload it from my brain and you guys are going to sort it all out. And that's pretty much what we do. We just get them to talk it through and then we build it from there. Also, by having it before the first investment decision means that you're not going to get an investment decision to actually go any further. You can't get any money to get a project manager involved. You can't assign anybody to it. There's no timesheets available until you've actually gone through that process. So a bit of a carrot and a stick there.
It sounds a little bit like, from what Sharon was saying, there's quite often very impatient executives who don't want to, and I've experienced this only recently, they don't see the value in having 10 people in a room to go through the planning or whatever it is, even if it's only for an hour or two or whatever, 3 hours maximum. That's a really hard thing to get them to understand. And the way that I usually say it is, well, let's just work out the value of these people that are sitting in this room for an hour or 3 hours. Now let's just look at the potential catastrophes that we can have 6 months down the track and the type of value that we will then incur when we have to bring those people back in, spend more time. What would you like to do now? Would you like to take that risk?
The cost of a reset. Oh my God.
Exactly. But it happens, doesn't it?
Happens all the time. Yeah, getting everybody back together again. We're doing a reset. And then there's another reset. It's like just set it at the beginning. Yeah. Have those clear metrics, have those clear benefits, the targets that you want to actually get to, and stay benefit focused. Then you know how to protect those benefits and move everything towards them and keep everybody, business and delivery teams, focused on the benefits.
I like how you said this is often before a project manager is even assigned. Mm-hmm. And I just wonder if there's a misconception that once that project manager is assigned, that it's all magic now. It all works magically. All of this stuff is done. It didn't need to be done before. What's the biggest misconception that you think that senior execs and boards have?
Yeah, I think the misconception is that the project managers are also SMEs. We are experts at delivery. We can deliver to the cows come home. But we are not the subject matter experts. We don't know your business, but we are experts at eliciting that information and helping putting it in a format and a way, in the best possible way, to get the value dropped as fast as frequently as possible. We are expert at risk management. We can see around corners to see what's going to happen and making sure that that's avoided. But we are not the subject matter experts. And we need the time with those people, because we could grab something and we could start delivering. It's like that old, the pictures of the tree, how the engineer designed the swing on the tree and then how the business analyst wrote it up and what the person wanted and what was delivered. You're going to have that. If you don't have the right conversations in the room, then something's going to get delivered as not what you wanted. So if it's all very clear at the beginning, it's like if you want to build your own home and you get an architect and you get a building team, wouldn't you want to be part of the design to say, this is where the kitchen's going to be? And by the way, it's 2 stories, not a bungalow.
Exactly.
You need to be very clear. If it was your money, you'd be a lot more careful about making sure what you want is absolutely articulated. The builder and the architect are not mind readers.
So you talked a little bit about the sort of skills of a project manager in that we're not mind readers, we're not the SMEs, we shouldn't be left in a hole in a dark room. We need to be out there talking to people. We're not necessarily change managers either, although a lot of us need to do that sort of work. But can I ask you, what do you think in that scenario that you were talking about would be some of the key skills a project manager or program manager would need to navigate that sort of situation? And my second sort of part to that is, if the framing hadn't been done well or not well enough or whatever at the start, so an expert like yourself hadn't been there and they've tried to do this themselves, what's the project manager going to do when they get to that point? What are the sort of skills?
Yeah, look, the key things for project and program managers, the ability to listen and communicate. So hearing what the business want and making sure that's presented in a way, being that translator between the business and the delivery teams, making sure that the business analysts and the testers and whoever is in their team, making sure the process designers, that they are understanding fully, they're getting the face-to-face time with the SMEs, that they can actually take what is being requested and put it into digestible chunks for the delivery to happen, and whatever, whether it's technology or any other type of project, make sure it's digestible chunks for the delivery team. So being excellent at communicating, excellent relationship building and maintaining the trust, excellent at reporting, and just staying aware of what could be the external factors that could mean a change, and just keeping everybody informed of what's going on and making sure that there's no surprises. So that really, really does help with the trust from the sponsors, the business, and the delivery teams, because we do all want nice, boring delivery and nice, boring go lives. That's what everybody dreams of. It just happens.
Yeah, it happens magically.
Yeah.
But when it does happen, through really good planning, it's a very satisfying experience, and you haven't had to drag your team through the fire. I think it's one of those things where, as project managers or program managers, we have to be our own advocate in a lot of ways and say, wow, look what we've done. You know, this is what we framed it up, or this is what you framed it up. These are the deliverables. This is the business case. Look what we've delivered. And we're delivering and delivering and delivering. I know a lot of people in agile projects think, well, we're delivering, we've done 20 iterations and look what we've delivered. And executives will go, yeah, but I'm not seeing anything much, because at a high level, this is what I'm expecting. And while you're telling me there's all this agility happening underneath, like the duck with the legs underwater, I'm not seeing it.
Yeah.
So, is that a thing that you think that boards or executives are not seeing? And how do we balance that, that perceived agility and delivery?
Yeah, boards essentially and executives, they want to know that the investment is being spent correctly. They want to see results. So by having those strategic outcomes that are measurable and visible, and having the prioritization done in the portfolio and the framing done, you have the money's being spent in the right place, and the people are being assigned to the right pieces of work, but you've got those benefits. And your last question was, what happens when you put a project manager on too soon and we haven't had the chance to frame up? Well, that project manager has to go back and ask all those questions, because you cannot get benefit profiles unless the business tell you what it is. So they must give you the information, tell you the story about why this is so good, what's the value in it, and how are we going to measure it? Who's going to measure it? When are we going to measure it? When are we going to see this? Really focusing in on them. So by having all of those in place and knowing what the value is, you then can make sure you've got clear proactive risk management against it and protect those benefits. And then as you are delivering iteratively through all your portfolio, for each project, each program in the portfolio, you can be calling out, okay, we've done this piece or this first go live. Okay, go live, yeah, big deal. But we have now just saved the organization 4 hours a day on this process, because now we're doing this process, and now that enables these teams to be able to actually do this other work. It's all the and so what, and so what. So we've now reduced the overtime that this team was constantly facing with, and HR's really happy because they were freaking out because the overtime allowances were absolutely being smashed. We've now made sure that our customers are able to access via a portal rather than phoning up and somebody's not shuffling papers. They've got everything digitized. Having the story and the benefits gives the value. So it's not just go live 1 happened, go live 2 happened. It's what does that mean?
Yeah.
Then the board
context.
can see. Yeah. So then we can actually go and get some testimonials. Okay, you guys used to do this, now you do that. That's the sort of thing that projects and programs and portfolios need to be calling out constantly.
Yeah.
Because they do get seen as a cost center, and that's not right because they add so much value. They're the powerhouse of the delivery.
Well, they absolutely are, and they are often the bulldozer that does the transformation. Not as bad as it used to be, 20 years ago when they'd say this project's going to be the catalyst for change, and you'd have to drag people kicking and screaming through fire to get to the other end. And it was not a pleasant experience. And that change would often not last. It might, last for 3 years or so. I'm going to ask you a couple more questions, but I just wanted to again, let people know that this will be on the YouTube channel at Project Manager Clinic. Please subscribe down below. I need all the subscribers that I can possibly get so I can keep doing this. Give me a thumbs up if you like what you see. If you want to connect with Gail, I'll have those details in the description of the YouTube when it's published, which will probably be in about 2 days once I've looked at it and made sure everything's okay. Now, Margaret and Sharon, was there anything that you wanted to ask Gail before we continue? We've got about 15 minutes to go.
No, I'm actually good. I'm enjoying the conversation a lot, so just keep going.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Okay. Now, Gail, we talked a little bit about what sort of skills the project managers might need to do all of this. But is there something that we need to be thinking about for our executives or project sponsors or even people in the business or maybe even the change managers? Like, does framing introduce something different that we need to be thinking about in terms of skills?
If you don't mind, I'll take it a little step back. So we talked about what the executives really need and what we need from the executives as delivery people. We need the executives to be very clear on what is a priority. Because if everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority. So if we have our strategy and our strategic outcomes, and most organizations will have 4 or 5 pillars of strategy, well, we can't deliver everything in year 1. So there has to be something that, can we chase this first and then this second? But if there's not a clear prioritization put in place, what you'll find is it's chaos. You've just got too many projects are being approved. It's bloated and there's zombie projects that don't quite know where they fit in. We're not quite sure how it connects to anything. So it's very clear prioritization. Now, getting the executives to agree on what is a priority is actually quite tricky, not for any bad intent, but you will have all the different divisions in an organization. So there'll be the internal, the back office, front office, your corporate, your back end, the IT teams. And all of them have very different KPIs. They've all got different reasons for employment. And unless all their own individual KPIs are linked to the organizational KPIs, it's going to be really hard for all of them to be aligned on what is a priority, because you'll have the front office team saying it's all about the customer, the member, the back office team saying, well, if we can't manage the finance and the accounting, then it's not going to work. IT saying we need to put out fires because these systems are going to fall apart. So there's only a finite pot of money and pot of resources to actually do the work with. So if we're very clear on what is the priority, then the portfolio can take that and actually do build an achievable roadmap with a common sense scaffolding around it for the delivery of all these pieces of work. And, you don't want enormous risk registers where everybody's bumping into each other and saying, well, we need these people and now they're not available and the SME's not available because they're assigned to 5 different projects as well as their BAU work. If you don't have the prioritization, you cannot make clear decisions. If you don't have the framing, you can't see the risks that are coming up.
I think one really interesting thing that you just talked about then, out of all of that you said, what I took away was common sense. Because common sense is not very common, as most of us know.
No.
And if you're a good project manager, you generally, I think, have common sense, or at least you're able to see in what way things should move. So I don't know about you, but in my experience, the expectations quite often from above, from the executives, are unrealistic. They want to hurry everything, and you sort of alluded a little bit to prioritization. And I'm going to probably put you a bit on the spot here, but what's the difference between prioritization and framing? Like, what would be your pitch to someone that says, oh, we're going to do that. We'll do the prioritization. Don't worry about it.
Well, if you have a clear understanding of what is important to the organization and you have your prioritization framework, then you can have very clear, defendable list of projects and programs of these are the ones that we need to be approving. And if any of the executives say, well, I want to do this one, and you can say, well, okay, that's absolutely fine. If we're going to do this one, which one of the others will we stop? Because there is a finite pool of money, there is a finite pool of resources. So here are the implications of that decision. Now, the executive may have a lot of information that you're privy to. So it could be actually a very good decision, but as long as they go into it with all the information that you have to hand and say, look, that's fine. We'd say yes to this. We must say no to something else. Which would you like it to be? And just have that very open conversation. It's once then that tells you which of the projects and programs we're actually going to even start looking at. So we start getting rid of noise at that point. Next step is framing, taking those individual ones and saying, right, who are we going to talk to? Who's the people who suggested it? And let's have a quick, whenever you look at somebody, you think, oh, it looks something familiar. I've done something like this before. I'm going to need, I need a change manager. I'm going to need who's going to be the sponsor, who's the main SME on that. Oh, this is quite complex. Maybe we'll get another SME on that one. Really thinking about who's going to be using this. Thinking about what's going to be your governance on it, who's your senior supplier, senior users, and then what are the next levels down. Have those people in the room and talk to them further and get their perspective. Making sure that you, again, it's just eliciting the conversations, asking the right questions. That's where the framing comes in. It's that next stage of these, which ones then should we start framing up? And then if they pass that framing stage, okay, then let's start looking at investment.
So can you tell me a little bit about how one of these engagements would typically go? Like who is your major stakeholder, for example, and what would sort of be the average duration that you might be there in an organisation setting up this framing?
An actual framing session. Look, I've actually done one, half an hour was the fastest I've ever done one, but everybody had been through it a few times, so they came prepared. If it's a very, very complex piece of work, we set aside half a day because we all were very aware that this was quite complex and it was going to be very, very tricky to get all the right information. Even then, we'd actually took the delivery teams in the portfolio, we actually took a lot of information away and then worked on it and presented it back and said, is this what we understood it to be? Did we get it right? And a lot of backwards and forwards checking. So there was a lot of work put into ones like that. But, with the right amount of Freddo frogs, you can get through any of these sessions. But we had a really robust scope. We knew what those risks were. We were planning at that point to manage those risks. We were bringing in the right people. We knew how many what the delivery team was going to look like. And we had a very good idea of what the first phase was going to cost. And, with a decent order of accuracy, we knew what the rest of the project was going to cost. So it's worth doing.
Are you able to set up in these projects, a way that they can gauge the improvement in performance because they have done this? I mean, I know that we as project managers have various tools to look at benefits realization, blah, 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 which is often quite boring in my book. The story that you talked about is probably something that's more would gel with executives and then have those sort of examples. But can you tell me a little bit about how, in your experience, you would set up those metrics, I guess, to demonstrate that performance?
Yeah, it's really looking at the risks. So the ones that haven't been framed properly, and you just watch their risk registers explode and how many times they are the watermelon projects. They're green until they're red, and then suddenly they're red, and you're thinking, "Whoa, what happened there?"
Yeah.
It's like they just weren't set up for success in the first place, and they're coming across things that if they had been framed, these would have been spotted out because they're all the questions that would be asked and all the thinking that would have happened right up front. So you will always spot it in the risks. Proactive risk management is crucial.
Yeah, I don't know about everybody else, but the amount of times that I've seen issues in the risk register or risks actually not framed correctly as a risk. So you end up with 100 risks when really the board only wants to know about the top 3 or top 5, and then nobody looks at them again. Nobody looks at anything. So there's lots of ways in Project Land that we can improve performance, but we've got to think about it. And I think that's probably why 70 to 75% of IT projects are still failing, because we don't think about those sorts of things. I don't know about other areas. I started in construction. I think we do more planning in construction, because if you're going to build a great big, cantilevered bridge that's made of concrete, you're going to really think about this before you start building it. Whereas in IT, we go, throw an agile team at it and let them work it out. But you're sort of talking more in terms of a portfolio of projects and working out what that portfolio should look like, how it should play out, what's that journey or that story that you talked about. And you primarily are working with the boards and the executives. Is that correct? Is that what I was getting correct?
So because I've got the experience of being at the board, working with the executives, running PMOs, and being a project manager and a program manager,
yeah,
I can see the pain across the board. And as well, the sponsors, oh my God, sponsors, you do not want your names attached to the big investment that goes belly up and doesn't actually deliver. So the poor sponsors, they do this on top of their day job.
Yeah.
And so any help that I can possibly give them, I will give them. So yes, I'll work across the board just to help. So the board, they want visibility on what investment they've actually committed, that it's actually happening, and the dial is being shifted. CEOs, well, they want to maintain the confidence with their boards, and they want to know that the stuff that they're on the hook for is actually happening. They do not want to be delving too much into the detail. They just want to get those high-level reports and provide them to the board, say, look, here's how we're tracking, and this is what's coming up. Most of our executives, they are usually the sponsors, and they're normally on the investment council. So again, they have their own lens that they want to look at it, and they've got their pet projects that they want to have delivered as well. So there's many, many different lenses, but having your prioritization and framing in place can meet the needs of all of those cohorts. The PMOs will thank you for it, because suddenly they have clarity on what success looks like in the eyes of the people they report to. And then how good would it be for projects and program managers to come in and say, here's the piece of work, here's the outcome statement, there's your North Star, this is what's wrong with now, here's your target, this is what we will do. When we go to close up, this is the checklist we will work against to say, have we reached this, are we done? Here's the why, this is why the business want it and what success looks like for them. So therefore, there's the measures, and put that in your schedule, because you got to build those measures so you are tracking consistently. And let's work through those risks. Let's manage those risks, and let's be very proactive with them. And finding a way to make risk management really, really sexy, because it is. It is awesome.
Well, it's
And
powerful.
if you do, it's
Yeah.
so powerful. You
It's so
do it
powerful.
right.
Yeah.
I remember years ago there was a program that I was running, and I would have my steering committees. We had them 10 minutes. It was, here's the decisions. Everybody's been briefed. It's all been socialized. The information was continuously being provided in, easy to digest chunks. The risks were obvious, but it was showing them, look, I can manage this one, but these ones I can't manage. I need your help. This is what I would like you to do. Being very, very clear with what I want, using steering committees for their purpose. It's a governance group, and what's the what does governance mean? It's to steer, guide, pilot to a predetermined outcome. That's their job. They're brilliant at it. Let them be brilliant. Ask them questions, get help from them. Don't be scared of them. But just using your good solid risk management to be able to see around corners and avoid falling down those potholes. You don't have to.
Absolutely. No, exactly. Absolutely, absolutely not. And I've said this many times before, that a lot of project managers are a bit frightened about telling their sponsors or stakeholders the bad news. But the news gets worse the longer you leave it. So it's like a naughty child that lies. You may as well come with the goods. And like you're sort of saying, Gail, if everything's been framed up, it's been prioritised, we know what the journey is in terms of the roadmap. Tell them the risks, frame those up well, so that you're actually giving them the right information, and then say, well, this is what I think you should do. This is the mitigation. What would you like me to do? And sit back and then wait for them to respond as the decision makers. But too many project managers make the decisions and keep going and then get themselves into a mess.
Yeah, just being very clear, what is the risk and who owns that risk, and going to the right people for help, and for all the treatments and controls, who owns them? Most of the time, it's not the project manager. So
that's right.
by trying to manage it all yourself and say, no, I can't, I can't flag this. You're doing yourself a disservice. You've got to go to the people who can actually do something about it and work with them.
Now, just one last question that I've got for you. So we've talked a bit about, governance and all of those things. But in terms of framing and say a group that's looking at that and maybe performance, are there particular stakeholders or roles that we should be more interested in?
Yeah, your framing sessions must have the sponsor there. So again, let's take it back to the analogy of building the house. You're going to have your first meeting. The person who's the homeowner, the person who's paying for it, needs to be there. So that's your sponsor. Really good. Anybody who's going to be living in it. So anybody of an age who's going to be living in it, get them there, because you'll want their opinions as well. Then you want the builders, so that's your delivery teams, and your architects there as well. So anybody in the periphery who's going to be helping to make sure that this stays within the law, within the guardrails of what you can build, when you can build it, and how's it going to be signed off. So having the right people in the room is absolutely fundamental. So framing session sponsor, your lead SMEs, product owners, whatever you want to call them, it doesn't matter. SMEs, product owners, it's all good. The people who are going to live with this and who want it, get them in the room, because they may tell you a different story than the sponsor, because the sponsor may not be actually using whatever it is every day. Delivery teams, look, have somebody who can reflect the project manager role, the project delivery. The PMO should be there. I love it if I can have the architects there, definitely a change manager, because there's actually a change management assessment in there.
Right.
That can help guide what is the size of the prize, how many people, what's the change involved, how many is it affecting, over what duration, is it a massive shift in process or very minor, are people's jobs going to dramatically change? All those things need to be taken into consideration when you're working these things through. So yeah, having representatives from the business, representatives from the delivery, and representatives from if there's technology involved, get the technology team in there as well. So some people are actually actively participating, others are listening and absorbing and taking it away and having a think. Everybody's playing a different role, but the business are doing most of the talking.
Right. Well, I think that's absolutely fantastic. I think we've covered an awful lot in it's just nearly 50 minutes we've been talking. I just want to see if Margaret or Sharon have any other questions before we wrap up.
No, I don't.
No? Okay. Well, again, thank you so much, Gail. That's been absolutely fantastic. I was really excited to talk to you about this in the Conversation with an Expert series that I've got going on the channel. Thank you for Sharon and Margaret for participating. That's been really good, and your input was very much appreciated. Thank you very much. As I said at the start, subscribe to the channel. Give me a thumbs up below so that you get the information when the next video drops. There will be information in the description of the video about Gail and how you can contact her. I also do a newsletter on LinkedIn, and I will be doing the April, May next week. So there'll be that information in that as well, so that you can contact Gail and information about the other webinars and things that are happening. Other than that, thank you everyone for attending. It's been fantastic. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you have. And thanks again. Have a great project day.
Thank you.